What if the person you trusted the most was secretly planning your murder? A young couple set off on a road trip through breathtaking forests, hoping to create a beautiful memory that would last forever. But forever came too soon, and what should have been a joyful escape turned into a horrific act of revenge. On Friday, October 15, 2021, 22-year-old nurse Emily Ferlazzo and her 41-year-old husband Joseph Ferlazzo packed up their converted camper van in Northfield, New Hampshire. With their beloved dog, they set off for Bolton, Vermont, a 2.5-hour journey through the breathtaking autumn landscape where fiery hues painted the trees with shades of red and gold. But just hours into their much-anticipated trip, a nightmare began to unfold, one that no one could have seen coming. On the morning of Saturday, October 16th, Joseph sent an unusual text to his sister before casually strolling into a small restaurant in Waterbury Village. The warm and inviting space seemed almost to comfort him, with the scent of fresh coffee hanging in the air. Yet, Joseph sat alone, his presence strangely incongruent with the usual morning buzz. On Sunday, October 17th, he met up with his sister in Burlington. When asked about his wife Emily, his words seemed oddly nonchalant, but in hindsight, they would take on a far more sinister meaning. Later that evening, Joseph joined his friends for a barbecue. The inviting smell of grilled meats filled the air, and the laughter echoes into the cool night. Yet, something didn't feel right. Emily was nowhere to be seen, and no one had heard from her in 2 days. No texts, no calls, nothing. Strangely, no one questioned why Joseph was alone. But as the hours passed, the uneasy silence surrounding Emily's absence became unbearable. By Monday, October 18th, Joseph made a baffling move. He suddenly left Vermont, riding his motorbike for 3 hours to Emily's parents' home in New Hampshire. His unexpected arrival came with a story, one that raised more questions than answers. According to Joseph, he and Emily had been traveling along Bolton Valley Road when a heated argument erupted. He claimed that, in the middle of their dispute, Emily abruptly stepped out of the camper and walked down to Vermont Route 2, insisting she would call an Uber to take her back to New Hampshire. Joseph assured everyone that he hadn't seen her since. But something about his explanation didn't sit right. The thought of Emily, alone and stranded in an unfamiliar area, sent chills down her parents' spines. Doubt crept in, and a terrifying question began to take shape in their minds. Emily and Joseph's relationship had always been rocky, marred by frequent arguments and at least a few known incidents of domestic violence. Her parents had long been uneasy about their marriage, but now, their suspicions about Joseph's story deepened. As the shocking reality set in, the parents contacted the police and reported Emily's missing.
Officials say 22-year-old Emily Ferlazzo from Northfield was last seen Saturday afternoon. They say the couple had an argument and Ferlazzo went for a walk. Her husband says he went to the store and when he came back, he couldn't find her. Ferlazzo was last seen wearing a long-sleeved black shirt, ripped jeans, and white sneakers. She also has a sleeve tattoo on her left arm and a snake tattoo from her chest to her torso.
While investigators launched a frantic search across New Hampshire and Vermont, Joseph made a suspicious move. He drove the camper van 60 miles north to St. Albans, where he visited a friend. Unaware of the unfolding nightmare, Joseph's friend allowed him to park the van outside his home. Meanwhile, law enforcement scoured wooded trails, back roads, and every possible lead in a desperate attempt to find Emily. The Vermont forest stood dark and silent, the air thick with the scent of pine and an eerie sense of mystery. Emily wasn't just another missing person, she was a bright, compassionate soul with a deep love for music. From childhood, she had a way of making people feel seen, a gift that ultimately led her to pursue a career in nursing. The clean smell of medicine and the constant hum of hospital equipment became her second home. She first worked at a general hospital in New Hampshire before securing a position at the University of Vermont Medical Center. In July 2020, Emily made a bold move. She left the familiarity of her childhood home and settled in Essex Junction, Vermont. The rolling hills of New Hampshire faded into the distance as Emily embraced the unknown. Her heart filled with hope for the fresh start ahead, but she had no idea that this new chapter would spiral into a nightmare. Not long after moving, Emily crossed paths with 41-year-old Joseph Ferlazzo, a man nearly twice her age. Their relationship seemed ordinary at first, but an unsettling tension lingered in the air, like the calm before a storm. Her laughter filled every room, while his silence grew heavier with time. At just 22, Emily was full of life and ambition, while Joseph was in a completely different stage of life. The nearly 20-year age gap raised quiet concerns, but what was even more troubling was how quickly their relationship led to marriage. Emily's parents, especially her mother, were immediately suspicious of Joseph. There was something about him that felt like a shadow, lurking in every corner of their daughter's life. A weight that seemed too heavy for her to bear, and as time went on, those instincts proved to be right. Despite their whirlwind romance, Joseph was already consumed by paranoia. He constantly accused Emily of cheating and demanded reassurance, growing possessive in ways that raised warning signs. Like a predator closing in on its prey, Joseph's every move seemed calculated, his grip tightening with each passing day. Her family saw these behaviors as major red flags, but Emily didn't seem concerned. They even came close to stepping in multiple times, especially when they noticed bruises on her skin. But she wore her smile like armor, shielding herself from the dark truth. She always reassured them it wouldn't happen again, and each time, they believed her, hoping they were wrong. But if they had known about Joseph's past, things might have turned out differently, a past filled with darkness that he hid beneath layers of his false charm. Joseph worked at Body Art Tattoo in Burlington, Vermont, a place with a bad reputation where some clients reportedly felt unsafe. In 2018, after a routine tattoo session, Joseph started talking to a woman. An innocent moment that soon twisted into something far more sinister. She never gave him her number, yet somehow, she got a message from him. Despite the unsettling situation, she agreed to meet him for a date. And at some point that night, Joseph spiked her drink and she blacked out. When she woke up, she found herself in the middle of a forced sexual encounter. Emily had no idea who Joseph truly was, and by early 2021, the couple had settled in New Hampshire, keeping their converted camper van parked on Emily's parents' property. Their marriage was toxic, filled with subtle yet deeply troubling signs of domestic violence. Concerned for Emily's safety, her family even sat down with the couple. They even created a communication plan, a last-ditch effort to bring stability to a relationship that was already spiraling out of control. The pages of the plan were crumpled and worn, a desperate attempt to fix what was already broken. But on October 18, 2021, their first anniversary trip took a deadly turn, setting off a chain of events that would lead to an unthinkable tragedy. What should have been a celebration of love quickly turned into a nightmare, with the crisp autumn air thickening with an eerie sense of dread. Police were actively searching for Emily, urging anyone who might have seen her to come forward. Anyone except her husband, because he was already their number one suspect. A friend in St. Albans reported seeing him on Monday evening, but after that, he seemed to vanish, and his whereabouts became a mystery. However, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. By Tuesday afternoon, Joseph was found at a convenience store in St. Albans. He had been staying in town, spending time with a close friend, a friend who had just confessed a chilling secret during a 911 call.
Vermont 911, where is your emergency?
Yes, my name is Spencer Levins. I've got a guy that is going towards St. Albans on Route 36. He says he killed his wife. I got him out of my car. He's on this road, and I guess there's a bunch of state troopers at that place. And I was like, no, but you got to get out of my car. And I was afraid. I got to get him out.
The very next morning, Vermont State Police detectives arrived at the same convenience store, and it took them a moment to confirm his identity. They followed him in distance, moving slowly beneath the bright fluorescent lights. Stepping outside, they informed Joseph that he was wanted for questioning in the disappearance of his wife, Emily. Inside the interrogation room, Joseph's story began to unravel. His version of events was drastically different from what he had told Emily's parents. The walls seemed to close in around him as his face twisted with unease.
You have an idea of what we want to talk about? Yeah. Alright, I'm here to talk to you. Like, you don't have to be there. Okay. I'm sure you've already talked to Spencer. I fucked up. Plain and simple. Like, I had a fucking lapse. And did something that I can't undo. So here we are.
The cold night air outside mirrored the chill creeping into his voice as he recounted the horror that had unfolded inside their camper van.
I think what would be helpful for me is just have you start from the beginning of what happened, and start from the beginning, and we'll listen. And then, maybe at the end we'll have a few questions, but we'll go from there. So I came to Vermont. I was living in New Hampshire for the last 2 months with my wife and her family. And I came to Vermont. We were supposed to have a weekend away, vacation, do some camping, have some fun. And as soon as I put the vehicle in park, my wife went completely berserk, completely psychotic. And I shot her.
Emily told him she was done and wanted out of their marriage. But Joseph couldn't let it go. He sat there, humming to himself for 5 to 10 long minutes. Then, in an instant, everything changed. Suddenly, Joseph's rage erupted. He grabbed his gun and with brutal force lunged at Emily. The cramped camper van turned into a battleground as she fought desperately for her life. But her struggle was in vain. Each frantic gasp for air grew weaker as Joseph pressed a pillow over her face. With chilling coldness, he pulled the trigger twice. Emily had no chance to defend herself. The bullets tore through the pillow and shattered her skull. After the cold-blooded murder, Joseph retrieved a plastic bag from the camper's kitchen. He tied it around Emily's lifeless neck as the bag's cold plastic crunching against her skin. Then, he dragged her body into the cramped bathroom stall of the camper van. The next day, Joseph secured permission to park the van at a friend's house in St. Albans without his friend having any idea of the horrors hidden inside. The van sat like a sinister presence as the day faded into a cold night. Under the cover of darkness, things start to turn into a horror movie. Joseph began the gruesome task of dismembering Emily's body. Each limb detached with a sickening thud, then he placed them into separate trash bags as though they were nothing more than discarded refuse. For days, Emily's dismembered body remained in the camper as he carried on with his friends.
A difficult evening here tonight as friends and family are learning this is no longer a missing persons case, but rather a homicide investigation. This is video from outside the police barracks. There was a lot of movement here around 7:30. VSP's major crime unit vehicle was stationed. There was also what appears to be a converted camper bus nearby.
When the autopsy was completed, it revealed the chilling details. Her body was not only being dismembered to conceal the crime, but she had also been stabbed multiple times after her death. It wasn't until after Joseph's arrest when police acted on their growing suspicions and searched the camper van.
There's large trash bags. White.
Inside, they discovered trash bags containing severed limbs, along with the murder weapon, a Glock 19 semi-automatic pistol. In addition, several other weapons, ammunition, and a large sum of cash were also found. The community was shaken to its core by this horrific crime. Meanwhile, Joseph faced charges of first-degree premeditated murder. His friend testified in court, describing the moment when Joseph confessed to murdering his wife.
I said, "What is going on?" He said, "Emily is back in the van." I said, "Is Emily alive?" He said, "No." And I asked, "Did you hurt her?" And he said, "Yes." And then he started getting fidgety in the car.
Okay. Can you describe what Mr. Ferlazzo was like when you say he started to get fidgety?
He started going like this, moving around, reaching for the car door handle. I didn't know if he had anything on his person that would maybe cause harm to myself, so I immediately stopped the vehicle and told him to get out.
Despite his earlier confession, Joseph pleaded not guilty, signaling his intention to contest the charges. 2 years after admitting to the cold-blooded murder of his wife, he sat in court as a completely different man, claiming he acted in self-defense. The courtroom was stunned, while the weight of his lies loomed in the air like a storm cloud. His defense took a dramatic turn, claiming that Emily had attacked him first, forcing him to defend himself. In his twisted version of events, Joseph alleged that Emily had reached for her own gun, hidden under the bed. But as the trial unfolded, his defense began to unravel.
And in fact, his story that she had a gun was directly contradicted by the fact that both of the pistols were his. Emily did not have a gun. His story that he remembers Emily's body falling after he killed her is directly contradicted by the physical and forensic evidence.
Joseph's lawyer pushed the self-defense narrative, urging him to emphasize his supposed fear.
I said, "Stop hitting." And that's when it happened.
What happened?
She said, "That's it. You're dead." And she threw her arm under her pillow, and she pulls her hand out with the Taurus. And
How were you feeling?
I was feeling horrified.
Were you afraid?
I was terrified. I was holding my Glock, and she started just like coming up at me, and I just fired.
Why?
She was gonna shoot me.
And you were afraid?
Very.
The prosecution quickly struck back, objecting at every turn. They pointed out the glaring contradictions between Joseph's new account and his previous confession.
He jumped onto the bed, he put this throw pillow over her face, and he shot her once and twice, directly into the left side of her head. And amongst all of these activities, he decides that he needs to make her body easier to carry, easier to move, and easier to discard. Mr. Filazzo uses this serrated saw and dismembers her arms, her legs, her feet, and her head.
In August 2023, in a last-ditch effort, Joseph's lawyer requested additional forensic testing on the firearm that was allegedly used in the murder. Joseph also starts to shift his story, claiming his earlier confession had been coerced and his memory of the events was sporadic.
So, Mr. Filazzo, we can agree that you lie.
Yes, I have lied to people.
You're lying today.
About
Everything.
I'm sitting here giving you my recall of what I have to work with.
No questions.
After hearing all the testimonies, the jury began deliberating. In less than 2 hours, they returned with a guilty verdict. Joseph would face a minimum of 35 years in prison with the possibility of a life sentence. Although no sentencing date has been set, it is expected to take place in 2025. It was a brutal, premeditated act of crime committed by a man who thought he could escape justice. Thank you for watching. Smash that subscribe and see you on the next one.